But there's also, on local politics, something that's very upsetting to me. And I was talking about this yesterday on Facebook. I've been talking about this for a while. The recent Broome County DA primary. We have learned that an unknown number of people, both from various parties, from Democrats, Libertarians, Conservatives, individuals who are not Republicans, were voting in the Broome County DA race. Now, a lot of people will say, well, Mike, it's not a big deal. We know for a fact that 25 people were kicked out of the vote. Their votes were not counted because they were not Republicans in the general election. And we know that in the absentee election, it is unconfirmed, but estimated that about another 100 people were not Republicans in that race. Now, you say to me, Mike, well, what's that matter? There were over 9,000 people who voted, on nearly 10,000 people, which is a pitiful number, by the way. But that being said, of those less than 10,000 votes, what's another 125 votes? The race was decided by 173 votes. If we know for a fact that there are somewhere in the neighborhood of 125, minimum 125 individuals who are involved in an election that shouldn't be, whose votes should not be counted, and are influencing or attempting to influence the outcome, how many people were missed? How many people were in that election who had votes that should not have been counted? I had another individual contacted me who mentioned that their daughter was told to fill out a Democratic ballot to vote in the election because that polling station ran out of Republican ballots. So again, I have to say, how many people? How many people had their votes nullified and or had their votes otherwise either not counted and they should have been, or how many people voted and should not have been able to vote? This is a corruption of our election system. Add to that the fact that we know New York State changed the law this year for this election that allowed illegal aliens with driver's licenses to be able to vote in our elections. How many illegal aliens voted? Think about that. You may not have the candidate you want because some illegal alien with a driver's license was allowed to vote and has not been caught because they used a fake social security number, and they have voted and influenced the election. That's foreign influence in an election. Now, am I saying that absolutely happened? I can't. It's unconfirmed at this moment because the tally is still being done, and we're still seeing who voted and how they voted. But I can tell you that the chairman of the Broome County Republicans doesn't care. He doesn't care because his candidate, Paul Battisti, won by 173 votes. So he doesn't want to have a count. He doesn't care if Democrats or any non-Republicans voted in a Republican primary because he already made a choice and his choice won. So he's not going to check to see if someone is influencing the elections. So that's a problem. Besides the fact that he's unethical, and I'm talking to you, Chairman B. Joy Data. I have already called you out publicly about this, and I will do so again because it is unethical and it is wrong for a chairman to get involved in a primary and pick and choose winners in a race. That's not his position. That's not what he's there for. That's what the voters are there for. But that being said, I have to say and why would non-Republicans get involved in the vote? Is it because they're uneducated about the election and thought that they could vote, even though they're not part of the party in a primary? Well, that's a lack of education, and that's troubling in itself. Or are they doing it because they were told by members of the Democratic Party, the progressives, people like Plot, progressive leaders of tomorrow? Maybe they're going out and telling people, well, you know what? Our candidate, Deborah Gelson, who is a social justice activist, will not do very well against a DA who's been, a DA candidate like Michael Korchak, who's been around for 21 years and has great experience. That doesn't bode very well versus her social justice agenda. So let's get a weaker candidate, Paul Battisti, who has zero experience in the job. Let's go up against him because he can't answer any of the questions. And I say that because I've actually watched his interviews, and every time he's been in a debate, and he can't answer the questions. So that That's a really good question. Why would Democrats come out and vote for a Republican in a Republican primary? Besides that, they think that picking one candidate that's weaker is better for their candidate in November because they want to win. That's a real good question. And I think it's really troubling. So that's one of the issues, and we're getting messages here on other issues. But I wanted to address all of these things because I think it's important. And our freedom is based on the freedom of our elections, the ethical quality of our elections. It's unethical when a county chairman picks and chooses who's going to be the winner of a primary. That's not his job. It's unethical and troubling when we have individuals who are uneducated about the election process and they're voting in elections they shouldn't be voting in. And it's unethical if we have parties or fringe fanatical groups like Citizen Action, like Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow or Plot, like Black Lives Matters, like Antifa, who are actively affecting our elections because they want to have an outcome that's better for them. That's disingenuous. If your candidate isn't good enough to be able to stand up against the candidates that are out there, then your candidate shouldn't be running in the race. That's point blank. Just shouldn't have them in the race. If they're not good enough to deal with their opponent, then you need to get better candidates. Not try and elect someone weaker so that you'll have a better chance. Now you may say, well, Mike, you just don't like Paul Battisti. He's not my candidate of choice. I didn't vote for him. But that doesn't change what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. What I'm talking about has nothing to do with him. Take out the name Paul Battisti and it doesn't matter. Take out Michael Korchak, take out the DA race and put in any other race you want. Guess when? You know what I'll use as an example? Hillary Clinton versus Bernie Sanders in 2016. We saw a similar thing happening there, where we had an election, a primary, being rigged, and voters were being nullified. Their voice was being nullified. The freedom of our elections was being influenced and affected. And I can tell you, there's a lot of Bernie Sanders voters out there who are still actively, massively upset about that because they were thrown to the wayside. They didn't matter because some elite official of a party decided that they don't count. I'm sorry, you can't do that. I disagree with that. No, I didn't vote for Bernie and I wouldn't vote for Hillary. It doesn't matter. The sanctity of our elections is more important. So if you're asking me, do I think that's important? Yeah, I do. And do I think that people should be called out for these things? Oh, yes, I do. And I will do it, whether it's a Republican, a conservative, a libertarian, a Democrat, a progressive, I don't care. Because they need to be called out. These things need to be said. And at this moment, no one in the major news media in the southern tier of New York seems to care that we had individuals violating the sanctity of our elections by voting in primaries they shouldn't be involved in. I'm the only one that I'm aware of speaking about this, that is concerned and says that we should investigate and double check that everyone who voted was in fact a voter in the Republican Party and was not an illegal alien. I don't know. But I guarantee you this, in November, if Democrats lose, they're going to be saying, hey, was every single vote a proper vote? Was everyone legally authorized to be able to make that vote? And I guarantee you that if there are any votes that are not properly registered individuals, they will go absolutely insane. On the counterpoint, if Republicans win and they say, hey, or they lose, and they say, hey, was everyone a legal voter? Were there any illegal aliens in it? They're going to say, well, we don't need to check on that. Don't worry about it. And that's a problem. That's a problem for America. You want to talk about foreign influence? There's your foreign influence.